I kicked off my trip from the East Coast, heading west, and made it a point to stop at different towns each night. By the time I rolled into Oregon, I felt this mix of freedom and bone-deep exhaustion from all the hours behind the wheel. One evening, as the sky darkened, I ended up driving into this tiny town that barely seemed to exist on the map. My gas tank was perilously close to empty, and I desperately needed to refuel. Trouble was, it was already night, and I could not spot a single gas station open. I started scanning the area and eventually pulled off at what looked like an old logging site someone had turned into a campground. The place was quiet, almost unnervingly so, surrounded by towering trees and gravel roads winding between spots for tents and RVs. A faded sign informed me it was self-serve, pay at the box. I figured I could crash there for the night and sort out gas in the morning. I rolled in and immediately noticed a fire burning at one of the first campsites. A man and a woman, probably in their late 20s, were sitting there. He had a beard. She had long hair tied back neatly. They glanced up as I stopped my car. I rolled down the window. "Hey," I said, "is this a good spot to camp? My tank is running on fumes, and I need a place to stay for the night." The man nodded without hesitation. "Yeah, it's fine. The nearest gas is 2 miles down the road, but it's closed for the night. Opens early." "Thanks," I replied. "I'll set up then." I parked at the next site over. It was empty, close enough to feel some company, but far enough for privacy. I stepped out with my tent and started hammering stakes into the stubborn ground using a rock. That's when the man walked over, carrying a small axe. "Need a hand? This works better than a rock." I paused, feeling a little weirded out that he was approaching with an axe, but his tone seemed genuinely helpful. "Okay, thanks," I said, and he quickly drove the stakes in. When he finished, I offered him a beer from my cooler. "Want one for helping out?" He accepted. "I'm Tom," he said. "I'm Alex," I replied. We sat near my fire pit, though I had not lit it yet. Then the woman approached. "Got any pills?" she asked bluntly. "Like painkillers or something?" I shook my head. "Just ibuprofen. Why?" She shrugged. "Headache." "And weed?" she added. "I heard Washington stuff is good." I tried to be friendly. "Pick some up there," I said, offering to share. We smoked a bit, chatting casually. Then they launched into a lecture about campground rules. "Make sure you pay at the box, ranger's check," the man said. "Yeah, put money in an envelope," the woman added. I nodded. I would. A few minutes later, they repeated it. "Don't forget to pay." I started feeling uneasy. Why keep repeating it? Then the woman said something that made my stomach drop. "If you do not have cash, just write your card number on the paper. They take that." I froze. "No way," I said, thinking this sounded completely off. She stood up. "Come meet the neighbors, they're nice." I hesitated but followed her to an RV parked a couple of sites over. It looked old, grimy, and abandoned for months. Cardboard covered the wheels and a dog lay nearby. She knocked and an older man, over 60 with red, bleary eyes, opened the door. A woman inside waved me in. "Come eat," she said. I made tacos. I sat on a worn couch, wary. The man launched into a long, meandering story about his life and the jobs he had, dragging on endlessly. Then he ended with, "You know Jeffrey Dahmer? 8 people. Funny, right?" I forced a laugh, though my skin crawled. The woman shoved a taco at me. "Eat it." I took it but did not bite. I tossed it to the dog later. When I returned to my site, the younger couple had disappeared. I sat by my unlit fire, heart racing, thinking about the axe, the pill question, the card thing, and that horrifying joke. Then I heard yelling from the RV, an older woman screaming. "That's it, I've had it," she shouted, storming toward my site. The younger woman followed. "I need a ride to town tomorrow," the older one said, looking at me. My mind spun. 3 strangers wanting in my car? No way. "I might leave early," I said. They frowned but walked away, whispering. I zipped my tent tight and lay there, listening. Footsteps? Or maybe just wind. I thought about the axe, the joke about eating people. What if these people were dangerous? I stayed tense for an hour, heart pounding, then packed quickly, throwing the tent into the car and driving slowly. Lights off at first so they would not notice. Less than a mile down the road, a B&B with lights on offered relief. I knocked, and a clerk answered. Need a room? I told him about the campground, the strange behavior, the weird vibe. He nodded. Stay here. Sounds creepy. I slept in a real bed, finally safe. The next morning I got gas, warning the attendant about those folks. People go missing sometimes, he said. I kept checking my mirrors as I drove on, avoiding small towns. That night, I vowed, no more remote solo camping. The next part of my journey started back in Georgia. I had been on the trail for weeks, moving through Virginia, my legs sore from the constant ups and downs. But I felt strong. One afternoon, I spotted a man sitting by the path, strumming a beat-up guitar. He looked rough with a scruffy beard and clothes that had clearly seen better days. His dog wagged its tail as I approached, seeming friendly. Nice day for a hike, I said, trying to be polite. He glanced up, eyes distant, mumbling something about being the captain of some squad. I nodded and kept walking, shrugging it off. Hikers come in all shapes and sizes, and some are just a little odd. Later that evening, I found a small clearing near Mount Rogers and set up my tent. It had been quiet since I left the man behind. I boiled water for my noodles, ate slowly, and listened to the birds settling in for the night. Darkness fell, and I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, exhausted but content. Sometime in the night, a sound stirred me awake, crunching leaves. I grabbed my headlamp. "Who's there?" I called. No answer at first, then a low, angry voice. "This is my trail." It was him, the man from earlier. I could see his outline through the tent fabric, his dog sniffing around. "I don't want any trouble," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my hands shook as I reached for my knife. "Just passing through." He laughed sharply. "Passing through? I will burn you out. Gasoline, watch it go up." He kicked near my tent. The smell of chemicals, probably lighter fluid, hit my nose. Panic surged through me. I unzipped quickly and faced him. He had a large knife, blade glinting in my lamp's light. "Back off," I yelled. "Think you can tell me what to do?" he said, stepping closer. The dog whined and retreated. "Look, I have food. Take it if you want. Just go." I tried to reason. He lunged fast. The knife sliced across my arm, pain burning hot. I screamed, swung my backpack, hitting him in the shoulder. He stumbled but came at me again, slashing my side. Blood soaked my shirt as I fell to the ground. He stood over me, breathing hard. "See what happens," he sneered. "You shouldn't have come here." I stayed still, holding my breath, forcing myself not to move. He prodded me with his foot and then walked off, muttering. The dog followed him. Minutes passed. I rolled over slowly, hand pressed to my side, wincing. I grabbed my phone, no signal. I stuffed a shirt against the wounds, tied it tight with my belt, and started limping back toward a road I knew crossed the trail miles away. Every step was agony. Roots tripped me, blood dripping down my leg. I whispered to myself, "Keep going, just keep moving." Finally, I saw two hikers ahead, a man and a woman at their camp. I stumbled into their light. "Help," I croaked. "Oh no. Sit down. You're bleeding badly," the woman shouted. She grabbed her first aid kit while the man tried his phone. "No bars," he said. "We need to get to the road." They helped me up, supporting me. "What did he look like?" the man asked. "Beard, dog, called himself John. Threatened to burn me," I said. The woman nodded. "We heard warnings about a guy like that on the forums." Step by painful step, they guided me. The cuts throbbed, dizziness from blood loss hitting hard. The woman tried to distract me. "Where are you from?" I told her. "Canada. Started the hike alone, master's in biology. Love the outdoors." Finally, we reached a road. The man got a signal and called emergency. "Stabbed hiker, Appalachian Trail, Davis Hollow area." Sirens arrived soon after, paramedics bandaging me, starting IVs. The doctors stitched multiple wounds. Nothing vital hit. Police later found the man following his dog. He had stolen gear from other hikers. That trip had been about healing, pushing limits, but it almost ended me. I had packed light: small tent, sleeping bag, food, water filter, pocket knife. I started early, passing a few other hikers politely nodding. One afternoon, I passed a rough-looking man with a dog. He stared at my camp before moving on. I shook it off, finished setting up, and ate. That night, footsteps outside woke me, then whispers. My tent zipper moved. I grabbed my knife. A face peeked in, the same man, a woman beside him. "Give us the pack," he demanded. "Get away," I yelled. They lunged, the man pinning my legs, the woman trying to grab the knife. I kicked, twisted free, stabbed her foot. They screamed, fled with a few items. I held the knife, trembling as they crashed into the brush. I waited until dawn, then packed and hiked hard toward safety. 2 miles down, an older hiker helped me call for rescue. Rangers arrived, checked the scene, and escorted me to town. No broken bones, bruises only. Police caught the pair later. That experience changed everything. Solo camping, once liberating, now required constant vigilance. The trail is beautiful, but danger can appear in a flash. I made it, but I carry scars, both visible and invisible, from those days. I started that leg of my trip in the quiet hills of Virginia, pushing myself through trails that wound up and down the mountains. My legs ached from days of hiking, but I felt alive, energized by the rhythm of the trail beneath my boots. Around mid-afternoon, I spotted a man sitting beside the path, strumming a worn guitar. He looked rough, beard scruffy, clothes dirtied from long use, and a dog rested loyally at his side, tail wagging as I approached. "Nice day for a hike," I called out, trying to be friendly. He glanced up briefly, eyes distant, muttering something about being the captain of a squad. I shrugged and kept moving. Hikers come in all shapes and flavors, some friendly, some quiet, some strange. I didn't think much of him at the time. Later that evening, I found a small clearing near Mount Rogers to set up camp. I'd passed a few other hikers earlier, but now the forest was calm and still. I boiled water for dinner, noodles, and a little protein I had packed, listening to the birds settle into the trees. As darkness crept in, I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, ready to rest. But sleep didn't last long. I awoke to the sound of crunching leaves. Someone was moving outside. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my headlamp. "Who's there?" I called. No answer at first. Then a low, angry voice cut through the night. "This is my trail." It was him, the man from earlier. I could see the faint outline of his body through the thin walls of the tent. His dog sniffed around cautiously. "I don't want any trouble," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands shook. "Just passing through." A sharp laugh came back. "Passing through? I'll burn you out. Gasoline. Watch it go up." I smelled something chemical, probably lighter fluid, near my tent. My pulse raced. I unzipped quickly, standing up, knife in hand. The man held a large knife, blade gleaming under my headlamp. "Back off!" I shouted. He stepped closer, knife raised. "Think you can tell me what to do?" The dog whimpered and retreated. "Look, I have food. Take it if you want. Just leave me alone." I tried to reason, my heart hammering. He lunged suddenly. Pain shot through my arm as the knife cut me. I screamed, swinging my backpack at him, hitting his shoulder. He stumbled but came at me again, slashing across my side. Blood soaked my shirt as I collapsed to the ground. Standing over me, he sneered. "See what happens. You shouldn't have come here." I lay still, trying to breathe quietly, forcing myself not to move. He prodded me with his foot before muttering to himself and finally walking off. The dog followed him. Minutes crawled by. I rolled over, bloodied, pressing my hand to my wounds. My phone had no signal. I stuffed a shirt against the cuts, tied it tight with my belt, and started moving south along the trail, heading toward a road I knew crossed it miles back. Every step was agony, roots and rocks tripping me, blood dripping down my leg. I muttered to myself, "Keep going, keep moving." Soon, I saw 2 hikers ahead, a man and a woman camping. I stumbled into their light, croaking, "Help! Oh my God, sit down, you're bleeding badly," the woman yelled. Bye. She grabbed her first aid kit while the man tried his phone. "No bars here, we need to reach the road," he said. They helped me stand, supporting my weight. "What did he look like?" the man asked. "Beard, dog, called himself John, threatened to burn me," I replied. The woman nodded knowingly. "We heard warnings about a guy like that on forums, crazy stuff." They guided me carefully down the trail. Every step was agony. The cuts throbbed and I felt dizzy from blood loss. The woman tried to distract me. "Where are you from?" she asked. "Canada," I managed. "Started this hike alone. Wanted to clear my head. Masters in biology, love the outdoors." Finally, we reached a road. The man got a signal and called emergency. "Stabbed hiker, Appalachian Trail, Davis Hollow area," he said. Sirens soon followed. Paramedics bandaged me, started IVs, and reassured me. Doctors stitched multiple wounds. Nothing vital hit, but police later caught the man, following his dog. They recovered other stolen gear from him: backpacks, tents, supplies from other hikers. That night I lay in the hospital bed, still shaking. My trip had been about pushing myself, finding peace alone in nature, but it almost ended me. That trail, once a sanctuary, now felt like a reminder of how quickly things can go wrong. After that attack, I could not stop thinking about the trail and how quickly a quiet evening could turn dangerous. I had packed light: tent, sleeping bag, food, water filter, and my pocket knife. But I realized that in a situation like that, even all that gear meant very little. My plan had been simple: a few days hiking alone to clear my head, push myself physically, and enjoy the solitude. That plan nearly cost me everything. A few days later, I pushed on again, this time more cautious, keeping my senses sharp. I passed a man on the trail, rough-looking, dirty clothes, a dog by his side, the same type of figure that had set off alarms in my mind before. He stopped and stared, lingering longer than felt comfortable. "You hiking alone?" he asked flatly. I nodded, trying to appear casual. "Short trip," I said. He moved on, but I couldn't shake the unease. I made camp in a small clearing by a stream. The forest around me was quiet, almost too quiet. I boiled water for my dinner, eating slowly, and watched the shadows deepen. When night fell, I zipped into my sleeping bag, headlamp off, but the night brought sounds I could not ignore. Footsteps crunching leaves outside, low whispers, the zipper of my tent moving. My pulse jumped. I grabbed my knife, heart hammering. A face appeared, him again, the man from earlier, with a woman beside him. "Give us the pack," he demanded, reaching toward my bag. "Get away," I shouted, lunging to protect my gear. They tried to wrestle it from me, the man pinning my legs, the woman grabbing my hands. I kicked, twisted, and managed to stab toward her foot. They yelped and stumbled back, grabbing what they could, a water bottle and some food, and fled into the darkness. I stayed on edge until dawn. Every rustle in the forest made me flinch. I packed fast, stuffing everything into my bag, legs weak but moving. A couple miles down the trail, I found another hiker. Older man with a long beard, resting on a log. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. I explained what happened, voice shaky, and he pulled out a satellite phone. Emergency services were called immediately. "Stabbed hiker, Appalachian Trail," he said. Rangers arrived an hour later, checked the scene, and escorted me to the nearest town. The doctors stitched up my cuts, bruises, and abrasions, the worst of it. Police later apprehended the attackers at a hospital, where they were seeking treatment for their injuries. They had a car full of stolen gear from other hikers, backpacks, tents, and supplies. I ended my trip early, driving home with a mix of relief and lingering fear. That trip taught me the importance of caution on the trail. Nature is beautiful, but it can also conceal danger. Even someone who loves the outdoors, who has trained for months and prepared, can be vulnerable. I learned to keep my wits about me, to trust instincts when something feels off, and to always let someone know my exact route. After recovering, I reflected on the ordeal. My goal had been solitude and reflection, a chance to push my limits physically and mentally. But the lessons were harsh. Always be prepared for the unexpected, and never underestimate how quickly things can turn dangerous. My knife had saved me, but luck and presence of mind did too. I stayed cautious on the trails after that, sticking to well-traveled paths and busier campgrounds. I still loved hiking, still found solace in the woods, but I carried more than just a knife from then on. Satellite phone, first aid kit, extra supplies. Every solo trip became a careful balance between adventure and vigilance. Looking back, I realize how fragile safety can be in the wilderness. One moment, it's peaceful. The next, everything can change. That fear, that adrenaline, the frantic hours of running and hiding, they are a part of the story now. Scars, both visible and hidden, remind me of the lessons learned. Even as I retell it, I can feel the pulse of that night, the terror, and the relief of being found. It changed me, made me sharper, more cautious, but not less passionate about the outdoors. Nature is still my refuge, but I now approach it with respect for its unpredictability and a preparedness I did not have before. I had just reached the top of Mount Goddard, standing over 13,000 feet above sea level, taking in the endless expanse of rocks and valleys below. Months of relentless work and study had led me here. This was my reward. I signed the summit register, noting I was only the third person that year to make it to the peak. My plan was simple: hike out from Florence Lake, reach the summit, spend a couple of days there, then head back. I told my dad my route before leaving, figuring I'd be home soon. The descent on the north side proved tricky. Loose stones and scree made every step precarious. I moved carefully, bracing myself against the slope. Then, without warning, a small rock dislodged from my grasp. Before I could react, a larger one, about the size of a backpack, tumbled down the slope, slamming into my right calf. The crack of bone against stone echoed in my ears as intense pain shot through my leg. I fell backward onto a patch of snow, sliding uncontrollably, blood trailing behind me. I scrambled, digging my left heel and hand into the snow to slow down, stopping just before jagged rocks could cut me further. When I looked down, my tibia protruded jaggedly through my skin, stark white against the red that was quickly soaking everything. My head spun, but panic had to wait. I had to act fast. No one knew my exact location, and cell service was non-existent. I tore off my shorts and used my long underwear to cover the wound temporarily. My pocket knife helped me cut a piece of my sleeping pad to wrap the break. I dismantled my walking sticks, using the shafts as splints, securing them with my belt and straps. The pain was unbearable, but at least most of the bleeding had slowed. Walking was impossible. Crawling was my only option, but with my full pack, it was going to be grueling. I left behind most of my gear, food, extra clothing, thinking rescue would arrive before hunger became a threat. I grabbed my bivy sack, a rain poncho, my knife, a whistle tied around my neck, gloves and hats. Every movement sent shooting pain up my leg, but I crab-walked toward another snow patch and slid down to a flat, rocky area about 100 yards away. I cleared stones, propped my leg up, and huddled in the bivy sack. Night fell. I blew the whistle sharp and loud, yelling, "Help!" over and over, hoping the sound would reach someone. Each echo mocked me, bouncing off the mountains, empty and indifferent. Pain kept me awake in waves. My parents expected me Monday. They wouldn't worry immediately. Morning brought no relief. A foul smell indicated infection was setting in. I crawled to a patch of clean snow, scraping debris from the wound, letting the melting snow flush out dirt. I repeated the process multiple times, massaging the area to encourage blood flow. Yellow pus mixed with blood, gross but necessary. Water came from snow, sipped cautiously. Hunger gnawed at me. I even ate ants and a moth I caught. Bitter, but better than nothing. Days blurred together. Pain throbbed constantly. Swelling made the leg feel like it might explode. I massaged my toes, wiggling them when possible. Every movement was agony. The cold nights only made the infection worse, and rain soaked me through my poncho, chilling me to the bone. I whispered to myself, "You're strong. You've survived worse." But doubt crept in. The idea of amputation crossed my mind, knife in hand, but I could not face it yet. By day 5, exhaustion was overwhelming. My body shook with effort just to clean the wound. Pus thickened, stench foul. I blew the whistle faintly, voice hoarse. Day 6 brought a miracle, a distant thump, a helicopter. I grabbed the poncho, waving it frantically despite the pain. The rotors grew louder, circling closer. A ranger leaned out. "We see you!" Relief crashed over me, tears and sweat mixing. They lowered a basket, and 2 rescuers dropped down. One, a medic named John, checked my leg. "That's nasty, but you're alive," he said. I managed. "How did you find me?" "Your dad reported you missing. We searched the area," he replied. They stabilized my leg, gave fluids, and praised my splinting. "You saved your life." Airborne in the helicopter, I finally allowed myself to exhale. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed a compound fracture and severe infection, but my leg would be saved after surgery and antibiotics. 6 days alone, broken and fighting, and yet here I was, alive. The next day in the hospital, I tried to process everything that had happened. 6 days stranded on that mountain, crawling over snow and rocks with a compound fracture, battling infection, hunger, and pain. It all felt surreal. My body ached everywhere, and even small movements made sharp pain shoot up my leg. But I survived. That was the part I clung to. I thought back to every careful step I had taken, every improvised solution I had made. Wrapping the splint, keeping the leg elevated, scraping debris from the wound, drinking snow water, even eating ants and a moth, it all had mattered. Every small choice had contributed to me still being alive, still able to breathe without help. It was a brutal lesson in resilience, one that left me with both pride and a deep respect for the mountains. The doctors worked methodically, cleaning and stitching the compound fracture, fighting off the infection with strong antibiotics. They told me the splinting I did in the field had likely prevented worse damage. The thought gave me a small measure of relief amid the exhaustion and pain. Even after surgery, my leg would require months of rehabilitation. I knew the recovery would be grueling, but survival was the first battle. While in the hospital, I reflected on the mental toll. Isolation for days, completely dependent on my own ingenuity, had pushed my mind to its limits. I had imagined voices, questioned every sound, and confronted fear in its rawest form. That fear, the terror of being alone with no help in sight, was something I would never forget. And yet, it taught me clarity under pressure, the importance of thinking ahead, improvising, and staying calm even when the body screams otherwise. After several days, I was finally allowed to move from the intensive care room to a regular hospital bed. The pain persisted, but the threat of infection was contained. I began light exercises for my leg, careful not to strain the fracture site. The nurses praised my determination. They had seen patients less prepared survive with less skill and foresight. I felt a strange combination of relief, humility, and pride. Police visited to gather my account. I recounted the events meticulously, every improvised step, every struggle, every painful decision. They took notes and confirmed that the rescuers had tracked me precisely, thanks to my father reporting me missing. The couple of stolen items, the ice-cold nights, the biting insects, and the relentless pain, I shared it all. Later, they located the man who had caused my injuries. He had sought treatment at a hospital nearby and had other stolen gear in his possession. Justice, in a way, felt like the final piece to close this chapter. During recovery, I replayed the entire experience in my mind. The mountains, which I had climbed with hope and excitement, had become a harsh teacher. Nature, for all its beauty and peace, could be unforgiving. And yet, I also realized how well my preparation had mattered. My small tent, my sleeping bag, food, water filter, knife, and improvised tools. They had all played a role in keeping me alive. Every piece of gear, every ounce of knowledge counted. I knew my love for hiking and climbing would not fade, but the lesson stayed with me. Respect the wilderness, never underestimate its dangers, and always prepare for the worst. Solo trips now carried a new layer of caution. I planned routes carefully, always informed someone of my location, and carried extra safety gear. The experience transformed my approach from reckless independence to thoughtful vigilance. Eventually, I left the hospital. My leg splinted and bandaged, my body still weak but my spirit intact. I drove home with a mix of relief, exhaustion, and a newfound respect for life and nature. The mountains had tested me, breaking me down physically and mentally, yet they also reaffirmed my resilience. Survival was not just about strength, it was about planning, improvisation, and sheer willpower. Even now, thinking back, I feel the echo of those days, the fear, the pain, the isolation, and finally, the triumph of being found. Scars remain, both visible and invisible. Reminders that life in the wilderness can change in an instant. And yet, I still love the trail, still crave the challenge, but now I approach it with wisdom earned the hard way. I had been driving across the desert for hours, the sun baking the asphalt, the air in the car dry and hot. I had left Phoenix early in the morning, aiming to reach the small town of Chloride before nightfall. My car was loaded with camping gear, water, and food, though I knew the nearest store was miles away. I liked the solitude, the wide-open stretches of sand and rock, but the isolation carried its own risks. About 3 hours into the drive, I noticed a faint wisp of smoke on the horizon. At first, I thought it was another car's exhaust, but as I got closer, I realized it was a fire. Not just a little campfire, but a spreading blaze along the roadside. I slowed the car, heart pounding, thinking I might need to turn back, but it was too late. The smoke thickened and visibility dropped. The flames licked at the dry brush and the wind carried sparks dangerously close to my vehicle. I pulled over as far as I could, heart racing. "Okay," I muttered. "Stay calm. Think." The fire roared, and the smell of burning wood and brush filled the cabin. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Typical. Desert roads were notorious for that. My map showed a side route a few miles ahead, and I decided to risk it. The road was narrower, winding between rocky ridges, but it offered a chance to bypass the fire. As I carefully navigated the turn, I noticed another car approaching from the opposite direction, a beat-up pickup, driver's window down. "Hey!" I called, waving. He slowed and pulled alongside. "You see the fire?" I shouted over the wind. "Yeah, it's bad," he yelled back. "Go through the canyon, it's clear." I nodded, heart pounding, and steered toward the side road. The canyon road was treacherous, loose gravel, jagged rocks, and sudden drops. I drove slowly, the car shaking with every bump. My thoughts raced. What if the fire spreads faster than I can get through? What if the car slips on the gravel? I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to stay calm. I reminded myself I had survived worse driving situations, and panic would only make things worse. About halfway through the canyon, my car hit a patch of slick sand. Tires spun, and I felt the vehicle sliding sideways toward a cliff. My heart raced, and I slammed the brakes, narrowly avoiding disaster. I exhaled, hands trembling, and whispered to myself, "Keep going. Don't stop. Just keep moving." It was the mantra that carried me through the next miles, each turn sharper, each incline steeper. Finally, I reached the end of the canyon, and the road opened to a flat stretch leading toward Chloride. The fire was behind me, contained to the roadside brush, but the smoke still made the air heavy. I parked briefly, catching my breath, the adrenaline slowly ebbing. I checked my gear, water, and snacks, everything intact. I knew I had gotten lucky, but the luck was no accident. Awareness, careful maneuvering, and quick thinking had kept me alive. As the sun dipped lower, I reached the town. Chloride was quiet, a handful of old buildings and a single diner. I parked the car, stepping out to stretch my legs, the heat still pressing down but less oppressive. Locals glanced at me as I entered the diner, and I nodded politely, ordering water and a sandwich. My hands still shook slightly. "Crazy drive?" the waitress asked. I laughed, though it sounded hollow. "You could say that," I replied. Later that night, I set up camp at the edge of town, pitching my small tent under a rocky outcrop. The desert was calm, stars overhead, and I felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. Nature had shown its power in that fire, in the heat and in the isolation of the canyon. It reminded me that even familiar roads and landscapes could turn threatening without warning. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the distant wind, reflecting on the day. Every choice, every small decision mattered. I thought about the next leg of my journey. I had planned to continue west, deeper into the desert, but I decided to adjust my route. There were more side roads, more towns with access to water and supplies. The desert was beautiful, vast, and dangerous, and I had to respect that balance if I wanted to finish the trip safely. The next morning, I packed up my tent and double-checked all my gear. The desert was cooler in the early hours, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and orange. I had learned my lesson from the fire yesterday. The desert could turn treacherous without warning, and I needed to stay alert. Water and navigation were now my top priorities. I drove carefully along the winding desert roads, scanning the horizon for any signs of smoke or other hazards. A few miles in, I spotted a small dust cloud ahead. My stomach tightened. Another vehicle? A sandstorm? I slowed, keeping a hand on the horn. A pickup truck emerged from behind a bend, kicking up gravel. The driver waved, and I waved back. Just a local farmer heading out early, nothing threatening, but my nerves were still frayed from the previous day. By midday, I reached a small oasis marked on my map. A handful of date palms and a spring offered a perfect spot to rest. I refilled my water bottles, ate a light lunch, and took a few moments to stretch my legs. The desert had a way of exhausting both the body and the mind, and I knew I had to pace myself. I sat on a sun-warmed rock, watching a lizard scuttle across the sand, and marveled at the quiet beauty of the place. Even after yesterday's chaos, I could not help but feel a pull toward the vast, open landscape. As I continued west, the terrain became rockier, the roads narrower. I moved slowly, careful of loose gravel and sudden dips. The desert seemed calm, almost inviting, but I knew better than to trust appearances. Every mile was a test of focus, endurance, and decision-making. Around mid-afternoon, I came across a deep wash, a dried riverbed carved over centuries. The only crossing was a narrow, uneven ledge of rock. I stopped, studying it, calculating the width, the slope, and the traction. One wrong move could ruin my car or worse. I carefully inched across, tires barely gripping the surface. My heart raced, every muscle tense. One slip and the car could tip or slide into the dry wash below. Inch by inch, I made it to solid ground, exhaling only after the last wheel was secure. The desert had tested me again, reminding me that patience and precision mattered as much as courage. By evening, I found a small ghost town marked on my map, mostly abandoned buildings, sand covering the streets. I parked my car near the main road and pitched my tent behind a cluster of weathered structures. The wind had picked up, whistling through broken windows and hollow walls. I double-checked my supplies, securing everything inside the tent. Dinner was simple, trail mix and a few granola bars. I stayed alert, listening to the wind and shadows moving in the corners of my vision. The desert felt alive at night, mysterious and sometimes threatening. As darkness fell, I lay in my sleeping bag, staring at the sky. Stars stretched in every direction, brighter than any city night. The beauty of the desert was undeniable, but so was the risk. The fire, the treacherous canyon, the narrow ledges. It all reminded me that even a routine journey could turn dangerous. I thought about the people I had met briefly along the way, the small gestures of guidance, the cautionary signals. They had reminded me that even in solitude, human connection mattered. Sleep came fitfully. Every noise, the creak of an old building, the whistle of wind, the distant howl of a coyote kept me half awake. I felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and heightened awareness. Tomorrow I would push further west, always cautious, always prepared. I had learned that the desert demanded respect, attention, and humility. One small mistake could have disastrous consequences. As I drifted off, I promised myself I would continue the journey but not rush it. The desert was vast and beautiful, but it required patience, vigilance, and careful planning. Survival depended on preparation as much as skill. And after the past 2 days, I felt ready. Not reckless, not fearful, but keenly aware of what it took to traverse such a challenging landscape.